Hello.
Hey, Efka.
Hello, Elaine.
Hey, Efka.
Hello, Elaine.
Hey, Efka.
Hello, Elaine.
I mean, is this going to be the whole podcast episode?
Why not? Just...
Because this is dull. I mean, probably not as dull as it normally is, but dull.
Do you think so? Let's try it again. Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Efka.
Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Efka.
Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Efka.
Do you want to talk about some board games?
Welcome to Talk Cardboard, a podcast about board games and everything adjacent with me, Elaine, and you.
Me, Efka. Hello, Elaine.
Hello, Efka. Let's not start that again. On today's episode, we'll be hometown, downtown, speeding all around in Joyride, playing Teenage Mutant Heroes that aren't turtles in Invincible, and stacking shelves at a pop-art B&Q in Wilmot's warehouse.
Wow, that was impressive.
Thank you. I realised after I wrote it that hero doesn't quite make sense unless you've seen the British version of Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Well, it does now because the latest incarnation of non-film TMNT is now subtitled Half Shell Heroes. And in fact, they're
Heroes in a half shell.
Yeah, they're starting to go by Half Shell Heroes now.
Go.
There's starting to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle erasure because they are erasing the TMNT part and just going with Half Shell Heroes. I don't know how I feel about that, honestly.
First, though, we have an email from Jacob about Qualia. Hi, NPI. Very sad to hear no one writes into you. I love the podcast and videos and always find your critical analysis of the wider impact of board games interesting. In your last episode, you were talking about how board game adaptations of video games often go wrong, and it reminded me of the concept of qualia. Qualia is a subjective experience of doing something, in this case playing a game, and lots of board game adaptations of media fail to capture that experience. Good board game adaptations manage to capture the qualia of the original medium whilst also providing an interesting board game experience.
This isn't a comment on the email itself or the person who wrote the email, but I think there's something to qualia and board games. And there was one review I wrote where I had a whole section on qualia, and then I deleted that because I thought, like, this is too much. This is too highbrow. Is that like a thing? No,
I think you thought you were going to wishy-washy.
Yeah.
Because you weren't talking about the game, you were talking too much about a single individual experience of playing that game.
Something I'm not known for doing at all.
No, but we normally talk about the games as an experience as a whole, not just like one individual experience of playing that game. That's why we have to play games multiple times, because maybe you're having a bad day when you play that game the first time, or maybe you're having a really good day, or maybe you really like the company, or maybe you're having the pizza that you want.
For those who don't know, can we have a definition of qualia? Just because it's a term that not everyone recognizes.
So Wikipedia says, in philosophy of mind, qualia are defined as instances of subjective conscious experience. So it's things that you know are happening. You are conscious of them. You know they are happening. It's not things that are just going in, I think, without you being aware of them.
But it's not just that. It's more that, like, because it's a subjective experience. So it's like, my red is not your red, that kind of thing, right?
That is the thing that is brought up a lot with qualia, that we don't know how someone else perceives or interprets anything else.
Yes.
Because like you're saying with the red, you can't explain to a visually impaired person that's never had sight what red is.
And that's why I think qualia is interesting in terms of board games, because it's like, do we even know that we're experiencing the same thing? Because we think we do, because we have a unified set of rules that's like, oh, that's the rule book, so we must all be experiencing the same thing. But actually, we're not, because our subjective experience of it is, first of all, philosophically, is up for debate, right? Yes. But also, like, we interpret that set of rules differently, even though that, like, we think we interpret it the same. And in the bonus episode, we're going to talk about Pampero, and I think this kind of discussion really relates to that game because some interesting things have happened with it within our plays. And I think the wider community responds to that game as well. So very peculiar, interesting stuff. Thank you so very much for writing in.
Let's move on to our first game. Joyride is published by Rebellion Unplugged by designers Duncan Malloy and Pete Ward with art by Piepar.
Big disclaimer from the get-go. Duncan Malloy is someone who we've had, I want to say, let's say like evening drinks almost every Essen Spiel for the last few Essen Spiels.
We have certainly had friendly interactions.
Yes. I have played Overcooked 2 co-op with Duncan, and I think that puts it more in the friend bracket than acquaintance bracket, you know, just that event alone, because you know, Overcooked is a friend's game because you play it with friends, right? So that we can qualify it as that. This is very uncomfortable because so very rarely do we speak about a game that someone designed that we know and we think it's like genuinely really very good. Like very good as in this could be something kind of big, very good, because it feels to me so far like, wow.
Do you want to explain the game a bit?
Yes. So Joyride is a game that says, what if Twisted Metal, but on your tabletop? And it kind of delivers on that. It reminds me of those sort of 90s video games, racing video games that were all about like busting up other people's cars as you race. So, you know, think if you have to, Carmageddon, think Twisted Metal, think... what was that racing game that Blizzard made that was... Blizzard, the people who made World of Warcraft, right? And Warcraft and StarCraft, before that have made this really old racing video game that was just about like ramming into other cars.
Rock and Roll Racing?
Rock and Roll Racing, there we go.
I looked it up.
Yeah.
I didn't just pluck that out of my brain.
Killer soundtrack, right?
1993.
1993.
Yeah. No.
So yeah, it reminds me of that genre, but it is delivered with the almost elegance of something like Heat, where it's just like, oh, I'm plugged into this, I'm tuned in, it's cars, they're going, I'm in control of one of them, what's gonna happen, right? And it just delivers on all of those fronts. There is one little caveat in all of that, and I think that caveat might be like a small stumbling step, you know, in terms of the whole design, but I think it's like a necessary one as well to make the game what it is. So I'm okay with it. Okay, so the principal premise of Joyride is you have a car, your car has some special abilities, you can get power-ups and pickups, so think Mario Kart as well. Definitely very Mario Kart adjacent. Of course, there is this amazingly vibrant setting of like a kind of Mad Max post-apocalypse. I don't want to invoke that too much, but the artist Piepar, my word, just knocks it out of the park. There is a color explosion in this box. It feels like the cars have crashed already, and the resulting spray of paint and everything is just this rainbow atomic detonation of vibrancy and verve, and it's
like Technicolor.
Yeah, it's almost like Technicolor, but like I don't know, Technicolor on high contrast, right? Like it's something like that. And yeah, it's just good. And then you open the rule book and it's just full page spreads, double page spreads of art, right? And it looks absolutely fantastic. So you've got that already going for it. So this really works, right? But then on top of that, you have these lovely wooden components, these chunky wooden cars that feel really pleasant to move along the board and maneuver. And of course, because they're wooden pieces, you can screen print on them, so they look great. And you have these vibrant racetracks that are very evocative. And actually, the great thing about the art there as well is that there is storytelling within the board art, right? That it feels like environmental storytelling, right? You know, you look at the board and then just by how the sort of tracks, you know, like skid marks and all of that, right, are displayed on the board. There's story going on there, and we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about the 2-player version of this game. But yeah, so okay, I'm clearly very enamored with the production, right? But how does it play? So the principal idea is you gotta win the race, right? That's what it's all about. So you race a car and it has special abilities. How do you win? Well, you complete a number of laps and, you know, cross the finish line first. As soon as someone crosses that finish line, hooray, that person's the winner, everyone else lost. The way you play on your turn is that you have, much like in Heat, you have a gear stick, and what gear on determines how many dice you will roll. But you actually can't change your gears at the beginning of your turn, unlike in Heat, because there are actually 2 steps on your turn where you will race. And this is the really clever and fun part of the game. So at first, you look at what gear you are on. Okay, that's how many dice you have. And the dice you use, this is so clever. You must use the values that you have rolled in the previous round. So if you went fast in the previous round, you know, like you rolled 3 threes, and the dice have 1s, 2s, and 3s, you know, you have to use those 3s if you want to use them. You don't have to use every die, right? You just like lock in whatever that value is, and that's how far you go, right? And then after that, you can change gears. And then, for example, let's say you were in gear 3, right? So you had 3 dice. Let's say you use 2 of them, you have 1 die left over. If you change gears and go even faster, you add 1 more die, and then those 2 remaining dice you will roll, and that's how much you will move again. Why all of this malarkey of moving twice and selecting values and then rolling values? Well, because of turning. The board is entirely hexagonal, and you can turn once in your entire round. So you can turn once before lock, which is where you use the locked in values of the dice, or you can turn once before roll. So if you turn on lock, you are basically making 1 turn in the entire round. That's your direction. And then you use the lock values, you use the roll values. Of course, when you roll, you don't know how far you're going to move. And then you just sprint that entire distance, right? Whereas if you lock in some dice, then turn, you're kind of making like a pivot midway through your turn, then roll some dice, you move the rest of that, you know, value in the new direction that you've chosen. So there's already some like finagly things happening here. I can see you want to say something.
There's more finagling than even that, because if you're in second gear, you can turn twice.
Yeah.
You can control your steering a lot better because you're going slower. I guess that's...
You are going quite slow.
And there's the extra additional sort of powers that you have. I didn't want to say powers, but abilities that you have that you can use at certain times. And that do change up the game. And those are incredibly thematic too, especially when we played the 2-player game. We didn't use the kind of base abilities. We used the character-specific abilities. And they've really changed things up significantly.
They have. And they're kind of awesome. And the last thing in terms of rules, right? If you're in gear 1, you only basically roll. You roll 1 die. And you can choose whether you want to go forward or reverse, which is necessary in this game.
And you'll find out why later.
Yeah. The real meat of the game and the real fun of the game kind of emerges when you read like the crash rules, which is like what happens when you crash into other cars. There's different rules for what happens when you crash into a barrier, like your car just stops and you then have to kind of go, okay, I'm in gear 0. Now I have to go into gear 1. And because you can only adjust one up. You
can't put a car into fourth gear immediately after you've crashed. That'd be silly.
Yeah. Every turn you have to go up 1, right? You can go down 2, but it deals you 1 damage.
Just like in real life. Like if you really do that in your car, it kind of, ruins your gears mechanism. I don't know. It ruins your gearbox. It's not good for the car.
So there's some really crunchy decisions, but also at the same time, the game is incredibly stupid because what happens when you crash into another car, and this is the most common collision. There are 3 types of collisions: rear-ending, head-on.
That's the best one.
Yeah, right. And no, the best one is like when you hit them from the side.
That's true.
Because you are basically rearranging which way the car that you just hit is pointing at. And so very often, what ends up happening is when you hit another car is that they are now going in the completely opposite direction of where they were expecting to go. And this is like so ridiculous and so much fun. And of course, when you have more than like 2 cars in a 4-player game, which we played with our friend Tom Brewster, who came to visit us over the weekend, and most of the games we're discussing on this
name drop
episode. Well, he name dropped us on their podcast episodes, and he said it was sponsored by No Pun Included, right? so this episode is sponsored by Shut Up and Sit Down, as if they need more advertisement. Yeah. When we played a 4-player game with Tom, this was just relentless fun because everyone was hitting the other person on purpose. That was the wobblier game as well out of the 2 because this is, I guess, the criticism part of the game where it takes a while to grok the movement rules.
Yes.
Hexes are like unintuitive, and you have to internalize this idea that whenever you move, however you move, because it's simple if you just have to make 1 turn. But what if you do like
a handbrake turn?
Yeah, which is
That's
one of the
one we got confused about.
Yeah, default special abilities. And kind of what you have to realize is that your rear always enters the spot where your front was, because your car takes up like 2 hexes. And this is what allows for these like pushing like to happen when you hit another car because they take up 2 hexes. So like if you hit the rear, you are basically like you are moving then the rear, right? And this is the one instance where your rear does not, because you are literally pushing, right? But when you are moving yourself, your rear always enters the space where your front was. So if you are reversing, your front becomes your rear. So your front always enters the space where your rear. Anyway, so it's a wobbly rule to kind of internalize. But once you internalize, like, that's how cars move, right? It becomes much clearer. But like it becomes more complicated when, free car pileup happens. And it's like, what happens here? To the rules we go. So it does require some perseverance and patience. But my word, is there just a whole wealth of things to explore?
The payoff is good.
Right. So Joyride comes in 3 versions. So there's Joyride Survival of the Fastest, and then Joyride Next Gen, which is the 2-player box. And then there's Joyride Turbo, which collects those 2 plus all the Kickstarter goodies that happened in the Kickstarter stuff. Joyride, the base box, is only £50, which I think is an unreasonably good price for something that comes with these nice, lovely components and this just stellar artwork. So the game looks really, really nice. You feel like you bought something that had a lot of love and care put into it, and it's just fun to explore and fun to enjoy. We got the turbo version because, I guess I have to do this as part of the disclosure. We have backed this game on Kickstarter ourselves and paid the full cost. We did get it sent early because we were asked, you've paid for this game. Do you want it now? And we said yes, because, we want to take a look at new products. So there is a little bit of something going on here where we paid for this copy. It's not a review copy. However, we were sent it earlier than other folk. But yeah, in this turbo box, there's just such a wealth and variety of different races you can have. So we just explored 2 of the maps. There are 6 maps in total, but unlike something like Heat, where the expansiveness of the game comes in the tournament mode, here it comes in just a variety of different scenarios and different map setups that you can have even for the same maps. And there's like 4 booklets, right? That kind of, and 3 of those booklets are for like, each booklet is for 2 map boards. And they say, okay, with this map, you will be using these cars and these power-ups that you can pick up, like, you know, flashbangs, the kind of you can throw in other people's faces, or oil slicks. Again, very Super Mario Kart, right? Yeah. And there's just, you know, like a lot of different ways you can dress up the same map. And it feels so interesting, doesn't it? Because like when we played the first game, it was just like a very kind of basic, like go through these checkpoints and like arrive at the finish first. And already there we felt like, whoa, there's so much going on.
Because it's like a derby. That's the word, isn't it? When cars drive around and bash into each other. It's a derby, right?
Yeah.
So it felt like that, like whereas Heat is very like an elegant racing game that recreates the feeling of racing a car. This does not recreate the feeling of racing a car. This is crashing cars into other people to try and put them off the track and put you further down the track.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, in the 4-player game and the 2-player game, a lot of very friendly jibes at each other of like, oh no, like, why did you do that? Oh no, my car's facing backwards, you fool. Like, why did you do that? So it really engaged us all to feel like we were really battling it out with each other rather than just like racing forward on a track and just trying to be first.
Yeah.
We really felt like we were trying to get each other out of the way and go the sneaky way as well, because that is another thing that I wanted to mention. You don't have to go through the checkpoints the right way. You can go backwards through them or curve around the corner and go the other way around the ring. So because it's a free-for-all, it's not like this nice, neat, straightforward track. It's like drive wherever you want, but go through the checkpoints as faster than anyone else, as fast as you can. And that was so much fun. And the fact that I ended up reversing through a checkpoint because that was my best bet, right? Was just hilarious.
Not only, so this happened in a 2-player game. It wasn't just hilarious because you didn't just reverse through a checkpoint. You won the game.
By reversing
into the finish line, right?
This is true. Because you thought you were going to knock me, like, my car the wrong way, so I'd like have to drive around in a big circle, and oh no, but I didn't. I just thought I'm going to just reverse and see what happens, and it did me good.
So I mean, I think you can tell a lot about the game from just that, but what that made me think of is that it wasn't just like we were trying to mess each other up as much as possible. It's like you cared about other people's turns because you were like, hey, I know what you're trying to do, but actually if you go this way, you're gonna hit Tom, right? Like on the side,
true, yeah.
Right? So you're giving advice to other racers in case they didn't see that they could do more damage.
Yes.
So that was kind of just deviously fun. And
there was always someone that was kind of picked on, in inverted commas, like through that whole 4-player game. There was always someone that was like, well, if you bash into them, you know, you'll knock them off. And if you, okay, then someone else, like, if you do this, you'll knock them out the way. Like, it went round and round and round of like the person that was in front or behind. We were kind of helping each other and hindering each other on purpose.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
It just has a lot of funny moments, like the nitro boost where like
Yes.
you get like this chunky big die to roll your nitro. So you'll go fast. Except one of the faces like is, oh, it doesn't go at all, and then also you take a damage, right? And so there's like these funny moments where someone thinks like, okay, I've got my nitro power up. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna punch it now. Everyone at the table is like, oh, what's gonna happen? It's a lot of fun. One thing that did surprise me was that it works as a 2-player game, because so often like racing games just don't. And Heat solves that with like very easy to control bots, and that works fine.
Yes.
I definitely don't mind that. But here it just works as a 2-player game. So they have these tighter maps. One of the maps is Risky Pete's driving school for delinquent drivers.
That's the one I played.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is that like the artwork, and this works so great. The artwork shows like areas that you shouldn't go in, right? Because it's like the parking lot, right? But because basically it's just the only thing that are barriers are things that are blotted out black, right? Like you start to realize, wait a minute, the artwork shows that I can't go there, but nothing in the game's rules says I can't go that way, right? And then you look at the skid marks, right? And it's like, oh, right, people have been racing through here, right? And then that sort of counter expectation works on multiple levels, because you kind of like, you have to retrain your brain that no, this isn't like a driving school. This is Risky Pete's driving school for delinquent drivers. So like once you recalibrate your brain, you go, oh, I can do things like go the opposite way. And as long as I hit the checkpoints in the right numerical order, it's fine, right? Hilarity ensues. And yeah, so it worked as a 2-player game because mostly we were just ramming into each other and trying to cause each other as much damage as possible. And it was fun. I had a great time. I had a great time exploring the more asymmetrical abilities. Like, so I was playing the robot car. So I was like steady and stable. Like I could kind of put -1 values on all my dice.
You were one with the machine.
Yeah. What, car machine one thing, right? Like I could put -1 either on my lock dice or on my roll dice, but ones were still ones, so that was nice. But then on top of that, like I had this one-off ability that's like you flip it and the -1 turns into a +1. So if you need to punch it, you can really punch it. But of course, using the asymmetrical abilities means you lose the standard abilities. So you don't have nonsense anymore, like handbrake turn, where you just like, and then turn as much as you want, right? It was just so good. It was so much fun. And there's just such a wealth of things to explore. Like, I think even if you got the base box, there is already a wealth of things to explore. But yeah, there's even more in the whole thing. We need to explore it more to know kind of like what recommendation we land on in terms of which box to use or whatnot, because we only played this twice, but wow, each time was just great.
I want to mention one more thing about graphic design. I know we've talked about it a lot, but going back to what you said about the thick black line, like there are some games that I look at the board and it's just, I find it very confusing to know where different boundaries are. And when I first looked at this, I thought, I don't know where any of the boundaries are. And then you realize that those aren't boundaries. Like you were saying, the thick black line, which is very clear, is the boundary. Anything else is a free-for-all. Anything else is passable terrain, right? So it's not as confusing as it first looks. And also the player boards, there are 2 sides to the player boards and the initiative track. One side of the player board has a lot more artwork, is a lot more colourful, and the other side is plainer and has more iconography. So you know what colour your car is, you know what your symbol is. And those are on the other side of the board, but they're kind of enmeshed in the art. So if you feel that maybe the art is too much for you, the brightness is too much for you, you can flip your player board and play on this, I was going to say smoother side. That's not really what I mean, like a muted side.
Yes, I played with that. I needed that. I struggle with visual noise, and it was actually really well done. I thought it was the like, I guess like you could call it like the high contrast side, but like it wasn't so much high contrast. It was just it muted the things that like weren't important and like elevated the things that were, and it worked great for me. And I don't know, like different people have like different needs in terms of what visually works for them. But in terms of, I guess, ADHD brain, like that side was great. I would be very surprised if Joyride doesn't end up being like a super hit, because this is just one of the freshest games I have played in a long time. It feels weird saying that about a game designed by someone we know and are friendly with. But so that disclaimer is there, right? But yeah, wow. This, one to keep an eye on.
Before we move on to our next game, we've had an email from Carly. I was just listening to the episode where you review Undaunted, Hamlet and Autobahn. In the opening segment, you were both talking about non-standardized measurements and then briefly about storing boxes of slightly different sizes. When talking about how to stack them, it was mentioned that they should be attacked in a pyramid with smaller games on top. A few days ago, I happened upon a game collecting website, I think it was called Big Game Hunter, that mentioned the best way to stack games, such as when carrying, is with the smallest on the bottom, because then the boxes on top are not bending the horizontal cardboard of the lid. Putting them in reverse pyramid means each subsequent box is supported by the more structural sides of the box below. Of course, they also mentioned the correct way to store games is upright on an edge rather than the bottom, but that creates so many problems I won't even get started. I guess one fix would be to make every game box have the same footprint so they all fit neatly into IKEA shelves. Anyway, thank you so much for the wonderful reviews. I love so much about what you do. Thank you, Carly.
There's a weird dichotomy here, because in some ways, I think a lot of people want to have like a standardized box, right? But in the same ways, you kind of don't want to have the standardized
You get
box.
a button shy game, and it's in like a Ticket to Ride size box.
Well, there's that, right? But also, yeah, like it kind of...
That's less convenient, I would argue.
Yeah, we want standardized sizes because, like, well, you could have like three, one for small, one for medium, one for big, right? But at the same time, like some boards just need to be a specific size, or some boxes need to be a specific size, and I think we are lucky in that way that we don't have this standard size, because then it allows for more creativity within the space, which is ultimately, I think, more desirable than an efficient way of storing everything, right? But at the back of our hearts, I think we still think like, it'd be nice though, wouldn't it? Like if everything fitted nicely. I don't know. Yeah.
But storing games on their side though.
No.
Then all the pieces fall out.
I store games on the side. I store some games, yeah.
Only if the insert is robust enough to keep everything together.
Or if it doesn't matter. Like,
if it doesn't matter.
Quacks of Quedlinburg is on the side because, like, what is in there that's going to...
Do you know what would be kind of cool?
Doesn't matter.
If there, like how you have a record in a record sleeve. So if you had like a box that had like a pull out that you put the components in from the top, so then you slid it back in, so it was supposed to be on its side.
I mean, that's cool, but you know what's even cooler? Remember that time we dreamt up, like, imagine if you have a board game that like you just open up the box as a like pop-up book, and it just sets itself up, right?
Like a pop-up tent.
Yeah. Like everything just kind of pops into place where it needs to be. And of course, that's impossible.
I don't even know how that would work.
Yeah.
When you needed to move things around
Future
the board.
magic technology,
maybe.
Right? But wouldn't that be amazing?
That's what BGA is for, and Tabletop Simulator.
I guess, yeah.
Our next game is Invincible, which comes from publisher Dire Wolf by designer Kevin Spack, with graphic design by Clay Brooks. Now, Evka, why does it say graphic design and not artwork?
Because all the artwork is from the TV show Invincible, which is based on the comic book Invincible by Robert Kirkman, who did The Walking Dead.
Nice. A nice zombie voice.
Thank you. I really wanted to enjoy this because I don't so much care about the TV show. I enjoyed the first season. I thought it was nice. And then it kind of completely lost the plot in the second season, in my opinion, where it's just like didn't know what to do with all the setup and world building that it had done, and just like went into a number of different directions. So the season feels disjointed and like just not cohesive.
Much
incoherent.
like the Walking Dead?
A little bit like the Walking Dead.
Watering Dead. I don't know why.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, it is a little bit like Watering Dead, honestly, because that's what became of it, right?
I'm looking at my plants. Sorry. I need to water them.
It just became watered down. And in a way that I think like Robert Kirkman's storytelling often, has one good premise. And that one good premise gets diluted into soap opera effectively. And not that there's anything wrong with soap opera, but like...
That's not the premise that you were expecting or given.
Yeah, so here it's much the same premise as The Boys, both TV shows on Amazon Prime, where it's like, it's superheroes, but what if it's cynical? And this one's a lot more vibrant than The Boys. The Boys is like... like swears and blood and gore.
Oh.
And there's less swears in this. And there's still some blood and gore, but it's animated, so it doesn't cut as hard, And it's not as over the top as The Boys. And it does have that melodrama of like, but teenagers, they go to school and stuff, right?
They have to get up for school in the morning. How do they hero at night?
Yeah, they have partners. And, how do you handle that, right?
They're going to prom.
Yeah. So
whatever teenagers do.
Whilst it's kind of trying to undercut that, superhero vibe with cynicism about superheroes, which is very valid, it often falls into the same storytelling traps that superhero storytelling falls into, because a lot of it does feel like Spider-Man, right?
I guess it's like everyone has a uniform. Like, even if you try and rebel against what people are wearing, you're going to be wearing something that someone else is wearing who's also rebelling against what other people are wearing.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of thing.
Anywho, let's talk about the board game.
Yes.
So Invincible, the board game, is just, all the assets from Invincible, but it's a co-op. It says bag building and tableau building game. And there's definitely that remit in there. You basically play one of the four characters, which is in eponymous Invincible, Adam Eve, Robot, just Robot, and Rex Splode. And there's also a standee for Omni-Man, which is the big bad of the show, which is what if Superman, but like he was evil and psychotic, which is pretty much once again The Boys, right? But this time voiced by J.K. Simmons rather than played by Andrew Starr. So you have that premise. And you are cooperatively trying to save civilians from various bad guy attacks, invasions, things are happening. We played 2 games of this. The first one is very much a tutorial. The crux of it is that it kind of plays like Quacks of Quedlinburg, but co-op, but less fun. And I wanted this to be more fun because Direwolf, did Dune Imperium, and I didn't expect that to be good. And, one of my favorite games. So here, like, it felt like it could have been something, but it plays like a very traditional co-op game that almost feels like it should have that zhuzh, because you keep drawing cubes from a bag, and then they'll power up various abilities that you have on your board, and you'll do things. But for some reason, it just doesn't cut the same.
I mean, the only similarity to Quacks is that you can keep pulling cubes and you're pushing your luck doing it. You can stop when you want to. Yeah,
and you're pulling cubes from a bag.
Yeah.
But then those cubes activate various power-ups, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like Quacks.
It doesn't, because unlike Quacks, where like you pull out the thing and it immediately does the thing, here you have a tableau of superpowers that you have built up. At the beginning of the game, you'll only have two, which is like your signature power and your starting power, right? And they have slots for cubes. So, for example, a purple one will normally have some sort of a combination of like finicky things you can do. Yellow one is like attack. Blue is like rescuing civilians, and orange is like
learning.
Yeah, getting more things, right? Maybe chucking more cubes into your bag and stuff like that, right? So, So, for example, let's say you have like a flying punch, which lets you hit something hard and then move, right? So you'll need, I think, 2 or 3 yellow cubes on it. So you pull out 3 cubes at a time. So you could pull out like yellow, purple, blue. Oh, okay. I can put 1 each on all the powers, and then like, I guess, wait. And the nice part here, and this is what I really liked about the game, is that like you can do this in real time. So your phase as players, you all pull out cubes simultaneously, and you can kind of pull out cubes and wait for another person to pull out cubes.
Because you put them in like a holding area.
Yeah. You can wait for them to pull out some cubes and then see where they put it on and what they pulled out, and then kind of inform your decisions based on that. And this is kind of where the neat part of the game, I think, comes out. And
it feels very cooperative in that sense that you might do something and then wait for someone else to do something that then helps you do something better.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that, right? And in fact, let me be very frank. There's nothing about Invincible that I dislike. There's no one mechanism in it that feels like a wrong move or a bad kind of design decision, you know? Everything coheres into a whole, and the game functions, I think, as intended. It's just that what for me was lacking was, you know, and in comparison to something like Quacks, and I know they're very different games because they are competitive, right? But there is that push your luck kind of back building element to it. It's just here that there's 2 parts. There's the bag, which is the cubes, which is the odds, and then the cards on your tableau, which are the actual superpowers that you can activate. Here for me, what was lacking is that the cards just don't do anything that is particularly like exciting or interesting. The one thing where it diverges is that you have like these ultimate powers, which are basically kind of like really jazzed up versions. You always draw back up to a hand of 5, no matter how many you played to your tableau, and you need like in a deck building game, you need like currency to actually play them, right? And so playing these ultimate powers not only is expensive because they're generally more expensive than the regular powers to play, but you also have to play them under an existing power of a matching color. And what that means is that in play, you have to first fill up the power that's above it to then be able to activate the power that's below it. And so what often that means is that you have to kind of plan out your turn. So like, let's say I have a blue ultimate power. So maybe before I play a blue regular power, because I want this blue ultimate power, I should probably find a blue card that only takes like 1 cube.
Yeah, it took some decision making away in that sense, I found.
Yeah, I think so. So you set up so you can build like your ultimate power, but they are often so expensive and kind of go to the like end game part of the game that you will maybe get to activate it like once and it will do something, right? It's not like it'll be cooler than like the powers before it. So for example, there's like difficulty adjustment cards in the game. So there's helper cards and obstacle cards or something like that. I can't remember, but it's like things like, oh, you're a superhero, but now you have a partner that you need to go on a date with.
And those helper cards, it said, did transfer onto future scenarios.
If you played in campaign mode.
If you managed to do it, yeah.
Yeah. There was like an element of like, okay, if we build up to this, it's really cool, but like there is an if there. And then on top of that, like you might do it once. And I don't know, it just lacked that excitement for me. Yeah.
The excitement of being, it's not always exciting, Efka, to be a superhero, a teenage superhero. It's not always exciting.
Yeah.
You've watched too much TMNT.
Yeah.
Where everything was exciting all the time.
If there's one thing I've learned from Invincible is that being a superhero is hard and boring, right?
Sorry.
No, okay, that maybe went too far. But yeah, no. So what do you actually do in the game? Well, villains will come out and you'll deal them damage. So it's literally like chuck away at their health, right? Or, they'll spawn minions, which is like, 1 hit point, basically, nuisances that you better take care of because, if it comes to their villain's turn and then they're still there, they'll do things that are annoying. What are the annoying things? Well, it's mostly like civilians. So they're in 2 zones. They're in safety or in danger. And then if there are none in safety, they're all in danger and you endanger civilians, they start dying. So that's one of the loss conditions. The other loss condition is, of course, like you take enough damage, you get knocked out. If you collect 3 knockouts, that's, again, scenario over. And then there's the villain clock. Like there's a set number of rounds for each scenario. So you have to like achieve things. You can thwart them. So villains have like abilities. So you can put like these thwart cube. They're not cubes. They're trapezoids. Yeah.
Yeah, like pips. Yeah.
Yeah. Thwart trapezoids on them. And then if you fill up their thwart track, the ability will stop functioning for 1 instance. So, there's
it's
things.
like a kind of weaken for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they will be okay again for the next round.
There's things you can do that don't feel any kind of particularly innovative or...
No, that's true.
Interesting. I feel like I played this game 1,000 times.
There were things I liked about this. I liked how, unlike Quacks, so when you pull out one of the cherry bombs in Quacks, all it does is inconvenience you. Uh-huh. Whereas in this, the kind of bag pulling clock, the bit where you're pushing your luck against is drawing black cubes, because if you draw 5 black cubes, bad things happen. But the black cubes are also wild cubes, so you kind of want them to come out because, like you said, it's quite hard to engineer the cubes so that you can complete these abilities that you have, that you can activate them. But you also don't want them to come out because your turn is going to end sooner. Or potentially, right? Because you're going to stop playing because you don't want to draw 5 black cubes. So I did quite enjoy that about it. I enjoyed as well how cooperative it is, that you can sort of pause your turn, let someone else do something, and you take a turn. You take the rest of your turn after. I thought that was cool. I liked how you can get rid of a card to get a new cube. That is useful because you can kind of engineer it so that, okay, well, I'm going to get rid of this yellow card because I really want another yellow cube, because that will help the abilities I've already got, rather than having another card that I'm going to have to deal with later on and get more cubes for. So I like that about it. I found it very rote. That's not necessarily a criticism or a negative, but you were doing the same thing over and over and over again. And without having seen the television show and without having read the comic, I didn't have any context for really what I was doing. It didn't have to have been these characters. It could have been anyone. And I did not get a sense of who these people were. There was a little bit of flavour at the beginning and at the end, wasn't there, when we played the scenarios, like this is the scenario you're playing. And that helped, but I still didn't really understand who these people were or why I was doing what I was doing. Apart from that, I wanted to rescue the civilians from their clutches. That was it, really. But so I didn't have a bad time playing with you. I enjoyed it. It was it was a game that I was happy to play because I wasn't in a space where I had a lot of brain power to do a lot of things. And it was fun, pulling cubes out of the bag, should I get another one? Oh, maybe not. I didn't. Oh, I've drawn a black one. No. This kind of thing. Oh, but actually the black one's good because now I can do this ability. That kind of thing was fun. And the fighting the enemies was smooth. I don't know.
Serviceable.
It was fine. It was fine. Like, this is the goal. Nothing about it was confusing. This is the goal. This is what you need. Go ahead and do it.
And I guess that's kind of where I land on this game, despite me being so blah and meh about it. I do have to recognize that I think for probably a lot of people who enjoy light co-ops, this will be great, because it works, it's smooth, it's got an amount of fun in it that isn't negligible, right? And it was okay, but for me, right? But it's clearly, going to be enjoyed by people who enjoy the superhero genre and, like that kind of light co-op where you have a little fire to fight, but you also can build up, right? And do things. I just don't know why in the year of our Lord 2024, I wouldn't play Daybreak or Slay the Spire or Leviathan Wilds, all co-ops we've covered recently that I thought were tremendous. But I don't feel like this hits that high.
No, but again, like what you said, maybe if you've got someone in your life who really likes comics or really likes the superhero genre, but isn't willing to but hasn't found themselves getting into board games, or you've struggled to get them into board games or find a game that they want to play because Daybreak is about, the environment, or do they care about that? Maybe not. Leviathan Wilds is about Leviathans. Do they care about that? Maybe not, but they do care about superheroes.
Sure, it's a more broadly accessible category, maybe, right?
Yeah, approachable, I would say.
Yeah. Sorry, as always, I confuse those two terms.
Yeah, I would say it's quite an approachable subject that a lot of people already are into. So maybe it's an entryway into board games.
Yeah,
especially because it's co-op. I know the other ones are like Daybreak, but I think a co-op game that you can play together if they're not experienced with board games, I think that's a nice way in.
And also, if someone's played Quacks, this could be like almost like a next step because it's got more like concepts like tableau building and like various intermeshing abilities.
Maybe.
Like it has a bit more meat in that regard. It's just that weirdly, what I found is that like whilst it has more meat than Quacks, I found it less exciting than Quacks. Like it's almost like they added to it, but it feels like the addition watered down the thing rather than elevated it. I don't know. That's just me.
Saying that though, I think it might be simpler to play than Quacks because you have to fill up the ability, you get that ability. Whereas Quacks, you have so many various different abilities and you're deciding which pieces to take to put into your bag. Will they help me? Will they merge with the things that I've already got in my bag? Blah 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 blah. So that's harder. I think that's a harder decision to make than drawing cubes and filling up the spaces that need those specific cubes.
Spot on. I think you've got something there. Yeah, it was fine. I enjoyed it. Like I had a good time. I wouldn't recommend this. But I also would not recommend it if it's something you think you're going to really enjoy. Yeah, it's a decent game, right? It's just it didn't have that spark. That's it.
Before we move on to our last game of the episode, I just want to read a very quick, but I think very sad email from Daniel.
Oh no.
I do not know anything about haggis. I've been to the UK once and I had some English pudding, in inverted commas, and a question mark afterwards, whose name did not match my imagination. They go on to say about something called Getter, which we should try if we're ever in Ohio or Kentucky. It's a combination of sausage, oats, and who knows what kind of stretched meat product. But so that sounds appealing. But it was just the way they said, whose name did not match my imagination. As a pudding. I just thought that was very sad. Like I can see their face, as they wrote that, like kind of crushed, very disappointed.
It's British cuisine has the ability to do that sometimes, I think.
Yeah, even as an English person, I find that,
Like I was watching an Anthony Bourdain episode, and you've heard this 1,000 times by now, but there was one where it was in Southeast Asia. I can't remember the country. I think it was Thailand. Sorry, I just watched so many of them lately, so it's blending in. But they were serving raw blood soup And I was like, the name of that dish is very honest about what that is, right?
Whereas pudding sounds
Yeah.
nice. But it kind of reminded me of when I used to watch the French Bake Off, the Bake Off but in French. And they were making Jaffa cakes.
Uh-huh.
And Cyril, the presenter, looked at this Jaffa cake, tried this Jaffa cake, and just said, "This is not a Jaffa cake," with the same level of sadness and just disappointment that I think this email has.
Yeah. Pudding? Question mark. Very good. Thank you, Daniel.
Our last game of the episode is Wilmot's Warehouse, which comes from publisher CMYK by designers Ricky Haggett, Richard Hogg and Dave King, with art by Richard Hogg.
Well, once again, the friends disclaimer. So none of the people you just read out, whose names you just read out, are friends.
Not yet.
But some of the development work for this game has been done by the team at Shut Up and Sit Down, who you've just heard in the previous segment. We're here with us playing games in our house and spending a weekend. That was Tom that was here specifically. And I would call Tom a friend easily. Hi, Tom. I know you're listening. Good job on Wilmot's Warehouse. In fact, you are apparently responsible for the one bit of criticism we have for this game, so that's going to be fun. But Wilmot's Warehouse, and this is fantabulous in a lot of ways as well. It does a really cool thing. So it takes the idea of adapting a video game. So and the design is listed, I believe, the same as for the video game. And rather than adapting the mechanisms of a video game, it adapts something that people were doing with the video game, and it lets you do something else with what they were doing. So what was the video game about? It was about kind of like being a warehouse manager, I guess. And you have all these boxes that have like these sort of like picture shapes on them with various colors. So they're like abstract shapes, right? They come into your warehouse and you need to stack them somewhere, right? You need to like make space for them. But then at the end of you stacking, there'll be like a phase where you'll have to quickly deliver them. So you need to remember where you left them, and kind of you use like these sort of big grouping areas of like, oh, like the umbrellas, they're there. Like they might not look like umbrellas, but maybe they are. Or like something that looks like a crab, they're here. Clocks next to other clocks, or whatever, right? It
quickly devolved into ickier things than that, though, our games.
Well, yeah, but it was mostly basically remembering where you left stuff and grouping things based on like what you interpreted the picture to be, right? This is kind of what you do in the board game, because mechanically you don't do what you do in the video game, but you do that kind of like, oh, what is this shape? Where does it go? Right? And what's strange is that it really took this idea and reinterpreted how that works, right? So instead of being like, what is the shape? Where does it go? It's literally, no, let's tell the story of this shape. And like, let's invent a headcanon together at the table as to what the hell this thing is and how every other piece relates to that one piece, right? And so you start telling this elaborate, fantastical nonsense tale of like, oh, this is clearly a whale crying in space, and of course there's a rocket above it, and the rocket is being pulled down into the world with giant hooks that are held by beavers, which is why the whale is crying, obviously, right? And what that weirdly does is it hacks your brain into remembering the placement of what I believe is, what's 5 times 7? Like 35?
FK.
Yeah.
Efka.
35 pieces? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Or it's 5 times 8. I can't remember. So it's 5 groups of like, I think 7 pieces, right?
Okay.
And so each group, it's like the first group, you just draw one tile. Like, what is it? Okay. It's albatross. Let's put it in the center of the table, right? Let's put the second piece.
You have to put it in the center. The first piece,
you have to put it in the center. But you then flip it face down, so you don't get to look at it anymore. The second piece is, this is a beach volleyball. The albatross stole the beach volleyball. Let's put it next to the albatross, right? Or you have to put like orthogonally adjacent. Okay, it's face down again.
So you're burying the lead here a little bit because when someone reveals the tile and they go, I think it's a candy corn. And someone else goes, what's a candy corn? I think it's a hat. And someone else goes, oh, well, no, that maybe looks like a beach like flotation device, like a rubber ring or something, and you're trying to decide what this silly thing is. So it's not just trying to remember your own headcanon story.
Yes.
Because you've already gone, well, that's a candy corn, clearly. So that's in your head. But then you're trying to go, no, it's not, it's a hat or whatever you're trying to remember that it actually is for this part of the story. And that brought a lot of hilarity too.
I think so. And this is why the game works better in a larger group setting. Right.
Plus there are pieces that quite look like each other, but maybe they're a different color. Maybe they're orange instead of blue or whatever, but they both look like snorkels or maybe walking sticks or whatever. So then when you're trying to match them up, you're going, yeah, I've seen this one before because it's got the walking stick and it goes here. And then you reveal it and you go, wait, no, it's the other one.
Yeah.
So that was funny because we were so sure that we'd got something and then it wasn't the thing.
It's a lovely game, and I think Shut Up and Sit Down, it's not the first game that they were involved with. They did Monica's with CMYK as well, same publishers. They have their own nonsense box, and they did a roll and write as well, I believe. I've never played that one.
I believe you.
Apologies, Shut Up and Sit Down. So like it's kind of their niche when they involve themselves with games. They are fun party things that evoke conversation, right? And silly conversation, which feels very much on brand, I think, for them. And so like I think it does that very, very excellently, because not only do you have to like come up with this headcanon, but at the end of like you've placed all the tiles, and there are these nifty moments where it's like, oh, you place the first pile, and then like you get like a directive of like, oh, everyone has to swap seats, or like you can only use 3 words now, right? Some of these, I have to say, worked better than the others.
You said that very quietly.
Yes, because some of them I thought, well, this is just a little pointless. But anyway, yeah. So
I don't think you have to use them. So I think the rulebook specifically says if you draw a directive and you don't like it, just ignore it. I think it does say that.
And that's fine. They didn't feel like a big part of the design, but some of them as well is like things like everyone change seats. And it's like, but
in a 2-player game.
Yeah, right. Like, or even in a 4-player game. Okay, I guess we all have to get up and move around.
Because that disorientates you. I think that's the point of that.
Yeah, but that's more annoying than fun, right? Look, I have to be critical. I was already effusive about one game made by a friend in this podcast episode. So I have to find fault here somewhere.
I want to be critical about the fact that I think the 2-player game is harder than the 4-player game.
Okay, well, I need to explain how the end game works for that, right?
Please do.
You go through all of these tiles, and then you have basically a whole pile of cards that on the back match the iconography on these tiles that you put down, and a whole bunch that you didn't put down, right? And then basically says, oh yeah, right, okay, so now as fast as you can, place all these cards in the correct spots, right? Because you can't see what the tiles are, you have to remember what they are, and it's 35 or whatever. And so like do it as quickly as you can. So first of all, in a 4-player game, it's going to be easier to remember because there's 4 people remembering rather than 2. And then on top of that, in a 4-player game, it's easier to go for all the cards because there's more people going for all the cards than two. Does the scoring account for that?
It does not.
It does not. And who's responsible for that? Apparently Tom Brewster.
Creating chaos.
I know.
On purpose.
I know. Hi, Tom.
Do you know, he is.
Hi, Tom again.
He does create chaos on purpose because when we were packing it up, he said, oh, just put all the customers together. It doesn't matter because they're all the same. We were like, no, we must stack them with the customers that are the same as the other tiles. Like we must stack them all together. So he.
I think that says something more about us than about him.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, all right then. Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Anywho, so that's the criticism. What is good about the game is just that it does something that it promises to do, and it does it very well.
It does.
Right? It is exactly the game you expect it to be. It creates silly stories, vibrant conversations. It's a great wind down game. It reminds me a lot of Once Upon a Time, but maybe a little bit more fun because it has a nifty gimmick. It hacks your brain into remembering these tiles.
And also it's cooperative.
Right, yeah.
Whereas Once Upon a Time is not.
It weirdly not, because what you're doing is cooperative, but
no, you're cooperatively telling the story, but you're trying to tell it better than someone else.
Yeah, that to me never worked about that game. But anyway, here it just kind of works. You're telling this absurd story. It's funny. Sometimes poop jokes are involved, but that depends on your table. And you know, like you have fun and you finish and you go, that was nice. That was really nice. I had a good time. It was silly. We wound down. It was great. Right. I don't think it does more than that. Right.
But I don't think it promises more than that.
Yeah. And I'm kind of trying to, gauge people in the right direction. I really like this, but if it sounds like you're not going to like it, you're not going to like it. If it sounds like, oh yeah, this sounds like a nice silly time with my friends, you are going to like it. I don't think it's going to blow anyone away, but that one gimmick really works for me, where it's just like, it hacks your brain. Oh, and it reinterprets the video game in an interesting way. So there's a second side gimmick, right, to it. So I like both of those things. It was really good, and I'm glad we own a copy. This is definitely a party game. I feel confident bringing out with my friends, but it is no more than that.
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask everyone a question. Do you have any tricks that you employ for learning a game? So, do you just read the rule book and you're like, yeah, I'm sorted? Or do you read the rule book? Do you make notes on the rule book so when you're teaching it, you can refer to those notes? Do you listen to people or watch people on videos telling you the rules? Do you read the rule book more than once? What do you do to learn a game and then also teach it? Do you have any tricks for doing that?
Do you know, talking of Tom, when he came to teach us campaign arcs, he had like a whole teaching step-by-step outline, like plan on his tablet. It was great.
What made me think of it really, why I wanted to ask this, was because in A Jest of Robin Hood, it had like how to teach this game. But that's only how the designers or the developers think that you should teach this game. So do you have your own systems of that, but with other games? I don't know. We'll
talk about Jest of Robin Hood in the next episode as well. It's a very interesting game, but yeah, it's nice that some games include like how to teach this. Another game that did this is Sidereal Confluence. It has a booklet that specifically, this is how you teach this. And it was actually really good because it made me internalize, oh, this game is much simpler than I gave it credit for, right? So yeah, I think sometimes they can be very valuable. I'm not sure they fit into every game because like, I don't think you need like a teaching guide for like Scout or something.
No, but I had to make some notes when I was teaching Scout because I didn't quite understand how it worked because I don't understand how the card combinations work. I do better now because we've played a lot more of that kind of game.
Yeah.
Those sort of climbing, shedding games.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand how the interactions worked very well. So I had to write it down.
I know it wasn't your first climbing shedding game because we played Durak before that, right? But like, I guess, yeah, if you're not used to that idea, you know, no, you're right. Funny how I picked the one where you did actually make notes.
Isn't that funny? And that is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening and for sending us your comments. If you have anything to say about this or previous episodes, please let us know. Elaine@nopunincluded.com. Efka, what is on the bonus this week and how can people find it?
On the bonus episode, she said, what's on the bonus?
Should I do that again?
No, let's keep it.
Okay.
On the bonus episode, we have Trick Taker S or Trick Takers. It's just that it's in all caps Trick Taker, and then at the end there's this small lettercase S. Lettercase? That's not a word. Lowercase. Lowercase S. I'm losing it. Help. Trick Takers, which is a very cool trick-taking game because it's like, what if root asymmetry, but in a trick-taking game? Is it good? I think so. One player didn't like it, but it's fine. I liked it, and I think you liked it. We'll talk about it.
We'll find out in the bonus episode.
In the bonus episode. And then we're also talking about a really big, heavy Euro game that does something very cool called Pampero. We'll have more scoop on that potentially in video later. But if you want to hear the advanced stuff, go and subscribe to our Patreon on patreon.com/nopuncluded, where you will get access to bonus episodes that we release every time we release a main episode of this podcast. How great is that? I think it's pretty cool. You should become a patron, and that way you support independent board game media. That's a good feeling inside of you. And with that, why don't you say goodbye, Elaine?
Goodbye, Elaine.
Goodbye, Elaine.